You guys, good morning. Welcome to Live with Lucas. Wendy, I'm glad to see that you are already here this morning. If you are out there, I say it every week. It's just a disclaimer. This always works better if you're like Wendy and you say hello and let us know what's going on. If you have questions, if you have comments, hey Sally, I'm glad that you're here. And like, even if it's like you want to tell me how great my hair looks today, I wouldn't mind hearing about that. But let's have a conversation. Let's not just make this a one-way thing. So please, mom's here. We can start. My mom is here. You guys, Alberta got some crazy news last night. We'll talk a bit about that in a minute. But before we do, we kind of want to put it in its place and get back to it. Hey, Emily, glad you're here. I want to tell you about a story about me and my brother Nathan. I don't know if any of you know my brother Nathan. He's a really good guy. He's a lot of fun. He's really quiet until he's not quiet. And he was with an organization called Youth with a Mission for a lot of years. And he did his School of Biblical Studies in Hawaii. I mean, tough place to go to school, right? Like, I mean, come on. And he went to School of Biblical Studies in Hawaii. And as a 15-year-old, I went to Hawaii to visit him with my mom. And so we went to Hawaii. And one of the days, Nathan and I went out kayaking. Now, I'm not a big kayaker, but we went kayaking and, in the ocean. We have been to space. We've been to the moon. We've been to Mars. We have not been to the ocean, to the bottom of the ocean. We do not know what's down there. And so we went kayaking and we went along this big, long cliff wall, probably 200 feet up. And we're kayaking in the ocean along this cliff wall to this like private little area where people where there's like great snorkeling, just me and Nathan, no tourists, it was super secluded. And we're out there snorkeling and probably for half an hour. And we finally kind of peek up out of the water and we realize that there's a storm coming, like a legit Hawaiian ocean storm. And we start to kind of get nervous. The waves are picking up really big. There's no way, we're at this secluded little corner. We got to go back all the way to the dock, which is probably a 45-minute kayak away. And so we just get going. And we're using a double kayak. And so we're going as fast as we can. The waves are huge. And like, I'm just a dumb 15-year-old kid. I don't know what I'm doing. And we're going along. And I'm paddling, and we're making good distance. And all of a sudden, like, it gets really, really hard. Hey, Marge, glad you're here. We're paddling this kayak, and it gets really, really difficult. And I'm like, man, why is this so hard all of a sudden? And I turn around in my kayak, and I see that Nathan has stopped paddling, and he's puking over the side of the kayak. So I'm doing all of in this emergency situation, my brother is checked out with seasickness. He can't help it all. And so it's left up to me to get us back to the shore. And then when we get back to the shore, the waves were crashing over the concrete pier that we had initially launched from. So it was like just precarious and dangerous. And Nathan was no help. He was no help. And the truth is, I got tied to somebody. I got in the boat with somebody who was going to weigh me down and pull me back. And when it comes to how you pick your friends is important too. You don't want people who are going to weigh you down, to hold you back, to be the kind of people who don't help you reach your potential. Who you choose as your friends is incredibly important. And there's this really cool story in scripture. It's about a paralyzed guy and his friends. And Jesus is in this home, he's teaching, and there's hundreds of people have come that nobody can get in the building. And they brought their sick friend who's been paralyzed his whole life to get healed by Jesus. And they can't get in the house. They've come all this way. They can't get in the house. And they're like, what should we do? And so they get kind of creative and they climb up. Hey, Heather, thanks for joining us. They climb up the stairs. They get to the top of the roof and they right over where Jesus is in the building, where the crowd has kind of corralled him. And, they make a hole in the roof, or they remove whatever's up there. They make this hole and they literally lower this guy, this sick, paralyzed man, at the feet of Jesus. And it's like, what is he supposed to do now, right? He's got this paralyzed guy in front of him. And, Jesus, he looks up this hole in the ceiling and he probably just sees a bunch of like curious faces looking through the hole, and he looks down at this sick man in front of him. And the Bible tells us, Luke, who records this event for us, said this. He said about Jesus, he said, seeing their faith, Jesus said to the man, young man, your sins are forgiven. And eventually told him he was healed and to pick up his mat and walk home. And what I love about this story is he doesn't just look at the guy sitting in front of him and say, your faith has forgiven your sins and healed you. He said he looks at this group of people, this group that worked so hard together to bring this man before Jesus. He says, your faith, the faith of the ones who made the hole in the roof, the faith of the ones who lowered you down, the faith of all of these people, they are the reason I'm going to say to you that you're healed and you can walk again. It's incredible for me to think that my faith can have a dramatic effect on other people, that what we do and who we care about and how we express our Christian faith can actually matter and be important for the people in our lives. And we need people in our lives, like these people who brought this paralyzed guy to Jesus, who will take us kicking and screaming and fighting and biting, dragging us toward Jesus, even on days that we don't want to see him. We need people in our lives who will do this sort of thing for us. And for me, I have a friend like that, somebody who I mean, not even just figuratively, I'm pretty sure literally has pulled me kicking and screaming towards Jesus. That's my friend, Mike Sotski, and I'm going to bring him into the conversation now. And we're going to talk about friendship, and we're going to talk about what it means to be good friends. So, Mike, welcome.
It's good to be here, buddy. And yeah, kicking and screaming, dragging you many places, I think sums up much of probably our early friendship for sure. And I don't know if it was friendship then, but it was kicking and screaming in lots of ways. That's for sure.
There's a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth early on in our friendship.
There was.
One of the things I think my mom hates is how often you remind her that you think I was raised by wolves.
Yeah, I had to help straighten out. I was happy to hear that she's joining us today and tuning in, so she can hear all the ways that we've helped form you and shape you, and yeah, been instrumental in that when Mom was off doing whatever.
For those watching today and later who don't know Mike, Mike Sotski is the pastor of Teaching and Missions.
Yeah, that's it.
At St. Alberta Alliance Church. But he's also, you'll recognize his name from how often I preach and talk about him. Somehow he seems to make it into most of the stories that I tell these days. But Mike was my youth pastor growing up, and we kind of transitioned to friends later in life, which I would say is unlikely. It was an unlikely transition for sure.
Yeah, there was a number of times where we were probably glad that we could go different directions and do different things and have some space. And I think probably our friendship has developed in the time we've been away. So we left Fort McMurray in 2010. So it's been like 11 years ago we left. And yeah, I think our friendship's probably blossomed more since that time. We'll call it that.
Something about the absence making the heart grow fonder or something like that.
Yeah, things we can learn.
But Mike was my youth pastor growing up, and I'll tell you guys, my favorite story about Mike was when I was probably 13 or 14. I started dating a girl at church from school, and I used to spend a lot of time in Mike's office with him, counseling me, playing video games sometimes, a little bit of counseling in there. And actually, his office used to be the one right above mine. It's the nursery now, so that's where we turned his office into a nursery. That's what we thought about him. But he was counseling me, and there was this big, Mike took this moment one day when I was in there, and he's like, you know what, Lucas, I don't think that you should be dating. I think you're too young. I don't think that you're taking it seriously enough. I think, you're just playing with this girl's heart. If you're not going to marry her, then you probably shouldn't be dating her. And, it's strong advice. Some of it good, some of it, questionable. But Mike was telling me that I needed to dump her, and I didn't take that advice. And now, like 18 years later, me and Adrian are still married. We got married, and now we're still married. And so it's I love reminding Mike every time I see him that if I had listened to his advice, I would not be with the woman of my dreams. So Oh, Adrian's actually here.
Oh yes, and I think some of that advice is probably to for the benefit of Adrian more so than like I think it was like kind of this backhanded way of saying Adrian is like really good and you are just a hot mess, and I don't know if she needs to be weighed down with where you were at that stage of life. It's a good thing you've grown up, and it's a good thing you've matured over time, because I think that's helped a lot. So
Oh, that's great. Well, I appreciate the pushing that you gave me. It
yeah,
was helpful, and it means a lot. Um, all jokes aside, Mike, and I've said this publicly. I've said it to you. You and Kim, have become one of God's greatest gifts to me.
Mhm.
Our friendship, and it's a friendship marked by serious conversations, uncomfortable conversations, but also like lots of laughter and lots of joy. You guys, it means so much to us. And one of the things I want to talk about today is friendship. But before we get into that, I know you have been kind of an advocate of this idea of soul care for
Mhm.
kind of a long time now, and you're kind of the one that introduced us to it a little bit. And it's something that we're starting to dive into here at Fort City. We have our first soul care group meeting in the evenings right now. But how important has soul care been to you and to your church? And what's your experience been with soul care?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I didn't realize we were getting teary before we started this thing, as you get all like, those are only supposed to be like fire pit conversations where you're like, okay, honest moment kind of thing. But
Honest moment.
I know, I'm like, oh man, my heart. So ditto on all of those things, because you guys are important, valuable, key friends for us as well. But I mean, the soul care stuff has been significant. I mean, I think especially in a season like we're going through, where it feels like the rug's been pulled out from underneath us in lots of ways. All these typical routines and patterns that we might have known, we've kind of built these safety nets around us. What COVID has done is just ripped all of those safety nets out in lots of ways, whether it's, we're not sure where our job is, we're having to spend a whole bunch of time with our family. There's just lots of uncertainty. How do I deal with people I disagree with and opinions I don't necessarily know? How do I deal with restrictions? And um, what it's done in lots of ways, and I think across the board for people, is it really has laid bare our heart, and has
Yeah.
really shone a light in those back places that we've been able to insulate. And so soul care really is being willing to pause long enough to have a look in the mirror, to reflect on some of the things that we've just accepted as normal. Maybe it's worry, maybe it's hurt, maybe it's shame, and
Yeah.
things that we've accepted as normal in our life. And Rob Reamer, uses an analogy of like a backpack that we carry around with us, and we stuff these things in it, and it's become normal for us. Like, we just get weighed down by this stuff. And one of the things that has always struck me from the time I made a decision to follow after Jesus is the call you get from John 10, that I've come to give you life, and life to the full. And yet this backpack that we carry, that's weighed down with all the things that Jesus wants to allow us to experience healing and freedom from, we navigate through life with it. And soul care is really just the opportunity to pause long enough to look at some of those things, to see what Jesus actually has to say about those things, and make space that we can experience and encounter healing that he has for us related to any one of those things. And so soul care has been significant. It isn't a one and done though. That's a thing. So you guys are
Correct.
working through it in this small group right now. One of the things that I know, so I'd gone through the soul care course probably 2.5 years ago now. We hosted a soul care, like just as COVID was starting. The week before, we shut down meeting on Sunday mornings. Part of the restrictions at the time was our soul care weekend with Rob Reamer in town.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've learned and I've experienced over the last 19 months is that I've had to keep going back into some of those things, because I've had reactions like more restrictions come down, and there's this like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's caused a reaction. And I'm like, what's underneath that? Like,
Yeah.
what's bringing that to the surface? The restrictions, the lockdowns, the challenges with it. that's just making it, manifest itself, bringing it out, causing it to blow up past the surface. But there's something sitting underneath the surface that is causing that the root of that. And Soulcare really says, okay, what are the roots of these things? And then how do I process it and deal with it and experience the healing that Jesus would like me to experience, that I would know life and life to the full.
Yeah. And, and one of the things, none of what you just said is easy.
No.
Right? Like none of
No.
that. This complex, it takes commitment and time. But one of the things that, is really important in the whole process is the idea of doing it in the sense of a committed community, and we're not talking large, but in committed friendships and committed relationships. And we had a funny example of this yesterday where I had a smoothie for lunch, and
Is you trying to be healthy? Like,
come on, man. Yeah. I'm feeling healthy these days. I'm down 12 pounds,
Wow. Awesome.
Not getting out of breath as I walk up the stairs anymore. And we had a smoothie for lunch, strawberry, banana, peanut butter, almond milk. It was great.
Raw eggs?
No raw eggs.
Okay.
But when I went to take a sip, I spilled it all down my sweater, or the front of my sweater. I didn't even know. Went all day like that, and me and Adrian were driving to Soulcare last night, or on our way out the door to Soulcare, and she's like, "Are you going to change? Like, you look disgusting. And you have this big stain on your shirt." And I had no idea. And then last night we ended up talking about how important and valuable the input of others is in your Soulcare journey, because they seem to have a vantage point on you that you don't have on yourself. Like, it's easy to see, if somebody if you believe a lie about yourself, like you're stupid, or you're not worthy, the friends around you, they don't see that lie. They see that you're smart or you're valuable, right? Like, how important to you in your walking of Soulcare and being a pastor and really just being a Christian, how important to you is, trusted friendships and committed relationships like that?
Yeah, absolutely. There is significant. I don't think you have the capacity to run the race of life that's set before you without others around you inviting you into and calling you on to actually confront and process and then encourage, cheer you on as you're doing it, to be like, you're not alone in this. I don't think we can run the race. I think there's example after example that, we can tell, whether it's leadership people, whether it's just those following after Jesus, that we could use as examples to say, you can see they haven't had people around them to be honest with them, to have some of those conversations, to say, actually, the way that you've just shown yourself, like your character that's come out, it leaves something to be desired. It misses the mark. It isn't helpful. It isn't healthy. And the need to have others that can call you on and encourage you on and, motivate you is vital in this process, because, God's created us, and Jesus intends us to be knitted together, right? To be known and know others. That's part of our makeup as people. Like, we're created for this place of relationship with each other. And that is because he knows we can't do it by ourselves. We need others to encourage us. Man, that's the point of being the body, where one person's down, the other person's up. Hey, you work to even each other out. But if all of a sudden you're in a space that's down, and I think that's one of the hardest parts in this COVID season, where we've got physical distance and separation, it's real easy to get in our own downward spiral. And there's no one to bring that like light in and say, hey, actually lift your head. There's a way forward. You can get through this. And I'm here with you getting through it. And I think that's been one of the biggest difficulties in this COVID season, is that separation, that disconnect that happens. So,
I think you're right. Even, even as recently as yesterday, this isolation is terrible, and the news that came out about the new restrictions, the church is going to have to change, and all that will be figured out in the next coming hours and days. We don't have a plan yet, but
welcome to the club. Oh man.
But my initial reaction yesterday, as soon as I read the bad news, I texted you, right? And not
603.
603, I texted you, and not just to commiserate, because there's a level of commiseration in it, and because it's hard, but also because you have been walking out this whole pandemic with me and Adrian the whole time.
Yeah.
Right. Like you guys have been, strength when we're weary, and, wisdom when we didn't have our own. And I know it's been reversed, right? Like we lean on each other and all this. And, Proverbs is so full of those, pithy little sayings. But like, this one's from this was Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpen iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. And that's been in this season. You guys, I feel like we survived better and healthier. We've made it through more than we could have because we have each other. And you're like 430 kilometers away.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the things that has just also been, Adrian, late night FaceTimes. Yeah, absolutely. It's made normal some of those kind of experiences that you don't necessarily have to be in the room. I think there's added value being in the physical space together, but it doesn't have to be. Yeah. And actually there's value in those connections and people that you walk with long term, right? Like there's things that we can call each other on because we've got like a long road together, and the value of that commitment and loyalty to each other is pretty significant in being able to know that you're for me. Because I think that's core. If you're going to be working these things out, it's, hey, I need to know that you're actually for me.
Yeah.
So that when you speak some of these things, it'd say, hey, there's probably some things that you need to address. It isn't like, oh man, you're just there to tear me down. But it is definitely walking that out and being that support. And you think about even just the statement from Proverbs, it's iron sharpening iron. In that process, like there's a removal of material, right? In the sharpening process. And that's usually what we shy away from, what we run from. But it's actually that part that refines us to the point where Jesus is like, yeah, we're forming your soul. We're forming your heart that you would be more like me. And that doesn't mean it's easy or fun or convenient. So,
yeah, I know it's, there's another proverb that I have in my notes today. It's kind of a funny one, Proverbs 27:6, and it says, wounds from a sincere friend are better than kisses from an enemy.
Yeah.
And I know over the years, Mike, there have been times where you have had strong words for me, but exactly like you said, because of the person, because of the trust we've developed, I hear it. I hear it faster than I would if it came from someone I know doesn't care.
Well, I'll tell a story about that. So we were this summer, we're out in the Lower Mainland visiting Kim's family, and we went down to White Rock. And so we had done a mission trip together. You were grade 11 or grade 12 or something. And we were doing White Rock, the beach and the pier as kind of a wrap up and just some fun. And we had some strong words about stuff that had unfolded on that mission trip. And I remember we walked past on like the boardwalk at White Rock, but we looked the opposite direction. Like we're like, I'm so mad at you right now. I'm not even going to look I see you coming, but I'm not even looking at you. And so we relived that as we were out at White Rock this year. But there's stuff that we grow from. I mean, we both go back to that moment and be like, okay, what do we learn in that? And probably there is stuff in my delivery and my approach to it that I'm like, okay, probably wasn't the most helpful, but you also learn, we go back to those conversations and be like, okay, what do we learn about how we interact with others in some of those moments? And yeah, it's a significant thing. But again, underlying all of that is a sense of like, hey, I got your back. Like I'm not leaving. I'm not going elsewhere. No matter what comes, we're here and we're on your side and we're cheering you on. And it's a mutual thing, which is so important.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody has ever accused you of being nice. Honest.
It could be.
But not nice.
Nice isn't the typical descriptor at times.
But, yeah. But you're right. It's uncomfortable conversations between friends are incredibly important, and they've been valuable to me over the years. And I still need them. I still text you, and I still send you questions, and I still commiserate with you when things aren't going well. It's we have our honest moments, and I love them. Yeah. But really, without dissecting our friendship, Miss Terrius and me and Mike are very similar. Are you suggesting nobody's accusing me of being nice? I think I'm a very nice person. But aside from dissecting our friendship, the real point that we want to get across to people is that, especially in Alberta today, this is kind of a hard day. Restrictions, people in service industries, their jobs are, up in the air again, and places of worship are in trouble again with some restrictions. Everything, it's not a great day, and your first reaction might be to raise your fist at the sky and yell into the abyss. But today, you got to search out that person in your life that you can call, that you can text, that can encourage you, but that you can encourage as well. That person that you can show some love to, and because really that's going to be the only answer in all of this. Mm-hmm. Anger is not going to work. Frustration's only going to get us so far. The real answer of how to survive this crazy time that we're being thrust into again is each other, and it's love, it's community as best as we can. And I don't know.
One of the things we say, one of the sayings that we have around St. Alberta Alliance Church is that spiritual formation is always happening. And an experience like today, experience like this season, just on a daily thing, to be like, oh, I've got this angst, this anger, this frustration, uncertainty, all of it. And how do I process that? Like, how do I, and like you say, who am I processing with? Okay, I do have to process it. I do have to get some of this out. I do have to put it on the table. To try and stuff it down doesn't do you any good, because then you just continue to carry it. But process that with somebody, to see it and wrestle with, okay, what's the way forward? And then how do I see Jesus in the middle of it? Because he isn't anxious. He isn't worried. He isn't caught off guard by any of these things. And his promise is like, I'm always with you. Be strong and courageous. It's that message to Joshua that I love. It's like, be strong and courageous because I'm always with you. Okay. Even today. I can make it forward. So
that's good stuff, Mike. Yeah. Well, we've been talking for half an hour. That went really.
Put two pastors on a screen together. We can probably talk for a long time.
How I like to close. Okay, I'm gonna pray for you.
Yeah.
And let me pray for you, and I'm going to pray for everybody watching out there today, and maybe our two churches, and just as we respond this weekend to the changes. So let's just take a moment to pray. So Jesus, I thank you for my friend Mike, and and his wife Cam, who have become so important to us, and just thank you that we have people in our lives that we can trust in the good times and the bad times, that they are there for us, and they really reflect your love in us in such an incredible way. And Jesus, I just pray for everybody watching this morning, and who is frustrated about the changes, and frustrated about everything, all changes and all the other things in our lives that are frustrating. And Jesus, I just pray that these people will take it to each other, that they'll find a community like Fort City, a community of friends, a place where they can be honest, be themselves, be encouraged and loved, and share love amongst each other in a powerful way. When Jesus said, love your neighbor, he meant it. It's an important one. So Jesus, I pray instead of raising our fists to the sky in frustration, that today we find a neighbor to love, someone to share the hope of you with. And I pray this all in your holiest names. Mm-hmm.
Amen. We even pray for Carol too. So Carol, we're praying for you.
Yeah, that's right. Mom, you got Pastor Mike praying for you. It's a big deal.
I know. I probably should pray for her, because I caused her so much stress when I worked with her. So I probably should pray for her lots.
There's from when she worked here, there's still holes in the wall from staplers that she threw at you and missed. Yeah. So
maybe that says something about me. Yeah. Less about her.
Okay, guys, it was fun talking with you. And if you have any questions or comments, you can still, if you're watching this after, make sure to throw them in the comments, and we'll get back to you. But thanks, Mike, for joining us, and for everybody else, we'll see you out there.
Yeah, thanks for having me.